Okay.
I'm just fading off into the background.
Okay. Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to On the Noise with your host, me, DJ Patty G. I am not in the studio today. I am in my sister's house in the middle of spring break. I'm nowhere close to Tennessee because this is a very special show. I really want to start expanding my show kind of outside of just WMTS. And so since I'm here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania for spring break, I thought I would interview a couple friends. I got one today, one tomorrow. And today I have a friend of mine here with me, actress and comedian, Vanessa St. Clair. How are you doing, Vanessa?
Oh, I'm great and happy to be here.
It is currently 9 o'clock at night, but we're here to have a good time. And let's just go ahead and get started with the interview.
Sounds good to me.
And so Vanessa was just saying we have known each other for 2 years. We met at a grad party for a mutual friend, and she was so funny, just like talking to her, and me and my friend were telling her how funny she was, and she was like, well, if you think I'm funny, you should come to my improv show.
Wow, I sound like the worst person ever. Like, I plug everything, which you'll get to hear plenty of in this podcast.
I mean, that's important to get your name out there, but she was like, come to my improv show tomorrow, and we're like, okay. And so we went to it, and we show up, and she was very surprised. But ever since then, I have like loved following her, just seeing everything that she does, and I've gone to a few other shows here and there. Plan to go to one this Friday, but honestly I really don't know that much about you other than performance wise. So I really want to know about like your origin story, your beginnings. What is Vanessa St. Clair's origin stories? Like, have you always been to acting? Just where did it all begin?
Okay, so this may be a little bit of a wild one, but as a kid, and this is completely 100% factual, I was really obsessed with Elvis Presley, and all your peeps in Tennessee, I bet will love that. But I really loved Elvis, and I was actually a tribute artist, which is a nicer way of saying impersonator. Impersonator is like a cheap one that wears a Hawaiian shirt and is like, hey, I'm Elvis. I was like hardcore, a big fan, obsessed with him, and basically I traveled around the tri-state area doing that. Yeah, I know, you're like, what is happening right now? So that was from the ages of 4, 5-ish to about 13, but I remember doing that, and I hit about 9, and my parents went, maybe wearing 70-year-old jumpsuits are not really a good look anymore. Maybe this isn't a really good look for a 9-year-old. No, they were very supportive, but they basically said, if you like this, why don't you try this? And I just had too much energy, so they put me in a theater class, and then it was kind of just heave-ho from there, just down the path. And basically I just started acting at 9, and I haven't stopped. And then about 2-3 years ago, I really became obsessed with comedy. I think I went through some tough experiences theatrically, and I just realized that I wanted to take a break for my mental health and from doing like scripted work. So I started doing improv and stand-up, and I've been doing that ever since. But within the last year, I started auditioning again for theatrical and also film work, and it's really been great. I think that the time away helped me get back into it and appreciate it for what it was. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So right now I am very shook. I did not expect that at all with the Elvis impersonating thing. I saw a picture that you posted sometime ago. I don't know, something of you dressed as Elvis. I was just like, oh, that's cute, like a little Halloween costume.
Oh no, that was every day. That was my life. I have several suits that were custom made. I had I'm not kidding. There's a, so the one with the eagle on it? So
Mm-hmm.
I like the one with the cape. It's from
Mm-hmm.
I think it's from 76. But anyway, Elvis had a white jumpsuit with an eagle on it. I didn't really like the white, so I did like a blue satin with an eagle on it, and I also have a black leather from his 1968 comeback when he was singing Trouble. I had the bracelets, and I still wear the jacket. I got the jacket a little bit big when I was 11, so that way I could continue wearing it. It still fits. So leather pants were not a good look for an 11-year-old. FYI, anyone who has children in the near future, don't let your kids do that. Horrible idea.
Okay, so we're gonna get into all the other like theater stuff, whatever, but I am now like obsessed with this because I also love Elvis, probably not as much as you.
What? Oh my gosh,
yes
I'm so happy.
I have like little Elvis. I had like this little Elvis, tiny little like, I guess, shrine to him in my old room. But
we're on the same page.
Yes. How did you even get started in that? Like, what do you know where your obsession with Elvis came from at that young of an age? Like, just explain that.
So this is a bit of a sad story.
Oh.
But I was I was just a very sickly kid. I had a bunch of autoimmune like disorders and disabilities, which meant that I got sick fairly easily. So I didn't really go outside a lot. And I remember really loving books and movies, and I remember watching what was it? I think I watched Lilo and Stitch, and there's that scene with Elvis, and I became fascinated, and I just asked my mom about it, and my grandma was a huge Elvis fan. She was obsessed, but she passed away when I was very little. So my mom, who did not like Elvis for the longest time because she was inundated with him for so long, she thought, okay, I'll just pick her up a number one CD, like the greatest hits. Okay. So she picked up that CD, and basically I became obsessed. And then shortly after, I mean, I wasn't this young, but I remember when I was a kid, YouTube was at the very beginnings, and I would just watch video after video of him, and I bought every movie. I went to Graceland. For my 7th birthday, my mom took me there. My party, I had a little party back home, and it was Elvis themed. We watched Blue Hawaii, and it was just so great, and I think he just had so much soul, and I honestly, I could cry when I listened to some of his songs. Some of his songs are groovin', but other songs are really, really heartfelt, and I think that he had the ability to sing multiple genres. And the more I learn about him, and the more I get, the older I get, I think about everything that he did for not just music, but pop culture, and how he really defined everything that we have from 1955 plus. If we didn't have Elvis, you wouldn't have the Beatles, you wouldn't have Bruce Springsteen, you wouldn't have Bowie, like David Bowie, you wouldn't have Eminem, you wouldn't have any of these people. I know Eminem is compared to Elvis all the time, but it's not really the same thing, but I understand what people are saying.
That's crazy. I can't believe I would talk about that all the time. I mean, I always see you post stuff about Elvis and older celebrities, but that's insane to me. I'm actually from Memphis. I don't know if you knew that.
What?
Yes,
no, you
yeah.
aren't.
I was
I'm
born
so
there.
excited.
I was lived there till I was 8 years old, and we moved, and that's where my sister went to school. Actually, she went to Memphis University. So that is super interesting to me. I can't believe that you used to do that. Were there people who were when you were doing these shows, what were the range of audiences? Was it big audiences, big stages, everything?
The biggest one I ever did was in Ohio, I think, which is so it doesn't sound fun. And
Wait,
everyone
so you
was
traveled?
Yes, just
wow.
very minimally.
Okay.
Not a lot. Not this. I'm not going on a national tour or anything. But this one performance I remember specifically because there was this older gentleman there, and this was basically me just reaching out to people saying, "Hey, can I jump on a show?" Different Elvis tribute artists. And I remember he was kind of okay with it, but I think he knew that a little girl, a 7-year-old girl, was going to get a lot of attention.
Oh, yeah.
And he immediately went, oh, well, I think he was a little bit I don't know how to put this. Like a 45-year-old man was like knew that he was going to get upstaged by like a cute little girl in a jumpsuit. So I remember whenever I got up there, he threw an obscure song at me, like a very obscure song from a movie that had done well. I mean, all of his movies are kind of kooky, but this was a very particular character song from a film that was not one of his hits. And I remember he threw it at me, and then in the middle of the line put the mic in front of my mouth, like as if, like, you know what I mean? And so just kind of throw me off balance. And I remember I had just listened to that album, and so I took the mic and sang, and he was blown away, and the audience was like, what? And that was really my first moment of kind of bringing down the house. Hello. I really have never gotten over that. That was really fun, and I remember being so happy that I didn't shy away from that. And even if I didn't know what the lyrics were, just leaning into it, just being like, you know what, I know what's going on right now. And even if I don't, I'm going to make something up. And that was really liberating.
What a like empowering story. Like that should be in a movie. I'm waiting for the movie about you. Have you ever heard of the musical All Shook Up?
Yes, I have.
Okay, that was my freshman year musical. I absolutely loved that musical, and it is one of my favorite high school memories of all time. But I just want to make sure that you knew about it, because I was going to tell you to go home and listen to it if you had it. Oh, of
course.
Okay, so moving on from Elvis, that like I just became.
We'll bring him up. Bring him up again. Don't worry.
He always just comes back. That just made me like even more like obsessed with your career.
Oh.
Okay, so moving on a little bit older. So you went to Lincoln Park Performing Arts School, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, I think that's so cool. I like had heard of performing arts schools, I think, as a kid, but I guess I just thought they like weren't actually a thing.
They became popular because of the children's television show Victorious, but I mean that's not at all what I mean. Well, actually, I shouldn't say that. I didn't even watch the show, but from what people tell me happened on the show, that's not what. I don't think that's how school actually was. But please tell me what you think. I want to hear.
Well, in this, I actually said I asked what was it like, and so we have other mutual friends who also went to the same school, and I had asked them before, like, is it anything like Victorious? And I didn't really see you as a like Victorious type, so I guess you can't really answer, but they said that it was.
Well, maybe. Well, here's the thing. I never watched the show, so I probably opened my mouth a little too soon. I'm just saying that all I remember from that show is people getting up on tables and singing, and I can tell you no one was that enthusiastic when we were going to school. But maybe that's just because I didn't hang out with the musical theater kids. I actually was a musical theater major in the beginning, but I decided against it later on, and yeah, I just didn't end up hanging out with those kids. So they probably were doing that on the other side of the cafeteria. I just wasn't a part of it.
Okay. Well, so talk about a little bit like what it was like going to a performing arts school, and was there a certain reason why you went, or just because you were just like, I love performing, this is for me?
So pretty much I went because I was obsessed, and I realized that I felt that for me it was the right choice. And not for everyone. I think for most people, they should get a well-rounded situation educationally, so that way they can figure out what they like. But I pretty early on knew exactly what I wanted to do, and I felt confident that that wouldn't change. And I've always been a person who goes 100%. So, let's say I don't like it. At least I'll know fairly quickly that I don't like it. And in fact, sophomore year, I actually almost went back to my public high school. And then I went back for one day and went, nope, no. Wow. No. Yeah, I'm never going back to a public high school. Nope, I'm dealing with only artistic people. And honestly, I'm probably not well prepared for a calculus class. I'm going to be honest. For anyone who wants to be well prepared to do engineering in college, don't go to a performing arts school. But, because I know a couple people who decided to go to engineering school, and I thought, that's silly. Like, you should have transferred schools sophomore year or something to reacclimate yourself, because it's a different mindset. But, I mean, I'm happy for them, but I'm saying that it's a lot tougher because it definitely is geared towards being artistic. It was a really great experience. I loved going there. I learned a lot from so many different types of people, and I think it really prepared me for working in the industry, although it's interesting because they're preparing children who will then grow up to be adults and work in the industry. And because it is a school, you're not allowed to do certain things and like touch upon certain subjects. So I definitely think that you should it's like anything in the arts. You should continue your education once you leave. I decided after auditioning for colleges and also going to a college to then suspend my education in that direction, but that doesn't mean that I ever stop learning. Like, I'm continuing to take classes in voice lessons, in acting coaching, in improv. You know, like these are things that I still feel as if I'm in school, and I probably always will be.
So moving on a little bit, you do so much. Like, I watch your Instagram stories, and you're probably the only person on Instagram who I like consistently watch their stories. Like, everyone else, I'll have periods where I like watch their stories for like a week or two, like consistently, but yours, every time I see Vanessa, it's always on the beginning, because I think Instagram knows like that's the one you're gonna watch.
Thanks. Oh, it's because I updated constantly. I don't actually update. The funny thing is, I don't update my actual Instagram very often. This past week I've really gotten back into it, but because no one likes my pictures.
Aww.
No one likes, so please like my pictures. No, but what's interesting is that so many people watch my story. I think it's because I do wild things on it. I think it's because I say things that most people shouldn't say, and then later on I go and think, oh, I should probably delete that. But whatever, here we are. You can't take it back. It's out in the ether.
I mean, I am very entertained by them. I love them so much, and just seeing you like succeed and do all these things, and you're just like seem constantly busy, like you were just in New York. And so I just kind of,
that was pretty fun.
I just kind of want you to talk about like some of your recent projects, because I feel like you've done so many, especially recently. Like I said, you've gone on some trips, and you were like invited to do stand-up on those trips, right?
Well, on one of them, basically what happened was I am a person who believes that if you bother people enough, they will listen to you. And that doesn't work for all people, I'm going to be honest. You have to have a certain, panache. But I went out to San Diego for a family vacation, and there is a comedy store out there, and anyone who knows stand-up comedy or anything to do with that knows that the comedy store is a big deal. I mean, Eddie Murphy's performed there. Okay, that's the only person I can think of right now, but so many people have performed there. There's a couple locations. There's one in Los Angeles. I was not in Los Angeles. I was in La Jolla, which is a suburb of San Diego. It's very, very fancy. And I remember going there and calling them about 15 times and said, what can I do to get on an open mic? And so they said, okay, we can put you on an open mic. And then after that, I basically, when I got there, just talked to everyone I knew about getting on a show, and then I got booked for a show the next night while I was there. So it's really just a matter of putting yourself out there, because I would say in terms of stand-up, I'm middle of the ground. I don't seem like a newbie, but I'm definitely not amazing at it. It's not my strong suit, but my ability to just put myself out there kind of opens up some doors that I think more shy people would have trouble opening. That's
incredible. I like when I saw you post on Instagram that you got invited to do that. I was just like, she is just killing the game. I'm like so proud of her.
I realize there's so much better out there, though. I'm used to stand-up comedy out here, which is, I mean, there's a lot of talented people out here, but the competition is so much fiercer out there that they have to be minimum 10 times funnier than we are. It was a wake-up call, honestly, and I'm really happy I had that wake-up call now when I'm living here than when I move somewhere and then go, oh, snap, I've got to reevaluate all of my material, my timing, everything. So I'm happy that happened. It taught me a lot of lessons.
But otherwise, did the show go well? Like, did the audience react well and everything?
Yeah, they had some fun. I remember this always makes me laugh. I like to make people laugh who I don't think would laugh at my jokes.
Okay.
So I have a joke about Matt Lauer, if you know who that is, the Today Show host who got in trouble for like assaulting a bunch of women. And I have a joke about him, and it's not really about him. Don't hate on me already. But it's like it's a long story. So anyway, I have this joke, and basically they had told me, and they're very serious about the light. So what the light is whenever, let's say you have a 5-minute set. At 4 minutes, they'll give you a blue light in the back, which says, you better wrap it up or else we're going to cut you. And in Pittsburgh, they say that, and then they'll let you go for another 2 minutes. Out there, they have so many people who want to get up, and they're very serious about it. They will cut your mic. It will go dead. You have to get off stage. So I was midway through the punch, and I realized I had to speed up because I saw the blue light. So I had to just continue speeding up throughout the joke. And then all of a sudden, I hit the joke, but it wasn't as funny because I didn't have the right timing. And the guy who got up after me was this huge biker dude with like a ZZ Top beard and these gnarly sunglasses. He looked weathered. He looked like he had seen some stuff. And he gets up there, and the first thing out of his mouth was like, "That's a great joke, and screw anybody who disagrees." And I was like, "Thank you. Oh my gosh, this like 55-year-old biker man just said that I had a good joke." That just made my night. So I think overall it was a good show.
So you talked about scripted theater beforehand, before you went to improv and stand-up and everything. We're going to get into those later too. But I kind of want you to talk about going back into that, because you were in a couple shows. You were in Of Mice and Men, correct? And Heathers, the musical. And anything else?
This show called Ubu Roi, R-O-I. Some people call it Ubu Roy. It's a 18th century French absurdist play. Okay. So you can guess how weird that's gonna be. I'm sure my mom and dad were like, "Wow, all the training, so proud." Yeah, that was pretty fun though.
So I just want you to talk about like kind of you said it was good that you kind of took this break. I guess just talk about sort of your scripted theater experience, because I don't really know that side of you as much.
So when I was in school, I did all plays exclusively, and I remember wanting to get into musicals but not really being considered because I'm not a strong dancer, and that's okay. I mean, I get that that's what they're looking for, but I definitely felt it's one of those situations where when you feel like you can't express yourself, or you can't make it any farther than where you are, you have to think of other options. So I had pretty much exhausted all of the character roles, and I get cast as that still, and I'm not upset about that because they're more fun. I used to be really upset. Because my best friend and I are very similar type. Except she's slightly more serious than me. So we have a very similar body type, and we used to look much more similar before I dyed my hair and got a perm. Great choices. And she used to always get the ingenue roles, and I would get the fun best friend. And I wasn't upset with her, but I was upset with the system for not believing that I could do a cute, girly role instead of, like, I'm Bernice, And so I was very disappointed in that, and I became extremely frustrated. And then I had some college auditions that went very well, and then I had some that went horribly wrong. And I remember just going, I want out. I need time to reevaluate my life, and I decided to invest some time into getting really good at alternative theater and making my own projects so that way I could keep myself creative with still being involved. Scripted theater is really fun though, because it's not the same kind of pressure. It's still its own set of responsibilities, but it's really fun to see someone else's words and interpret them versus relying completely on yourself and in the moment to come up with something interesting.
So do you think, taking a break, I know you said that did help, but do you think doing improv during that break, like, helped you with your acting in scripted theater?
Most definitely. I think that improv makes any actor better. as long as it's real improv. And I know that sounds really rude, but I see a lot of my friends who are actors put on their resume improv experience, and I know them, and they are not good improvisers. And I think it's a completely different, it's one thing to take an improv class in an improv, game, play an improv game during an acting class with an acting teacher teaching it to you. It's another thing to learn improv skills from someone who is a comedian. It's a different mindset. And I've done dramatic improv, which was wildly different from comedic improv. And I can say that if you're in an acting class and they go, let's do some improv that's dramatic, I would definitely say that that's okay. But comedic improv, you have to wire your brain differently for that. And I think that it definitely helped me I think it's changed, honestly, my whole perspective on life. And I know that sounds kind of crazy, but
I would believe it.
There's a concept of in improv called yes and what it is it's very simple, but it's hard for people to grasp fully, to really embrace it. It took me a long time because I'm a detail-oriented individual. And what it is you're basically saying yes to whatever statement the person before you just said, and then adding a piece of information onto it. So if someone says, "Hello, I'm Ron," you go, "Okay, you are," even though you know that person's name is Dave, you go, "Okay, hey Ron, the telephone man." I don't know, I'm just making something up. But if you approach life with that mentality, I think it drastically changes the trajectory of your day, week, month, year, entire lifespan. And it makes you more present. I think improv has made me think more presently instead of always jumping to the future, because you never know what can happen if you just agree to do something, unless your instincts tell you it's not safe. And then don't do it, because I've been in that situation too, and yes and did not help me. But if you don't have any little voices that say this is really a bad idea, then you should definitely do it. I think it can change, how everything's gonna happen. That's what happened to me last week. So
yeah, I have a friend who used to hate doing improv, and now she's in an improv group in college, and she said really it's a science almost, and you just have to, it's not just, I've played Freeze, but I'm not an improv person whatsoever. And it's definitely I have so much respect for people who do it, because it's just crazy to watch.
Thank you.
And I've been to some of your shows and I laugh so hard, and I'm the fact that these people can just come up with this is just insane to me. That's a great transition, because I kind of wanted to start getting into improv. What made you really start getting into it? How do you find teams and everything? And then we'll move on from there.
Okay, so I live in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and here we have a theater called Arcade Comedy Theater. There's a couple other theaters in town. I've worked with them all. There's Skit, which is Steel City Improv Theater, and there's also the Unplanned Comedy Warehouse. All three of them have teams. All three of them have auditions. Arcade Comedy is the one that I frequently work at. I really like where they're located, and they're just very organized, and that's helpful to me because I have a crazy schedule. So, and I really love the people that I work with there. But everyone's really cool. But in that respect, basically, you need to get good before people will consider you to be on a team, to be honest. They don't, they want people to audition, but I see people who just audition randomly. They have once a year auditions in August for the team. And I've seen people who've never been to the theater before go, I want to audition. And I go, ooh, that's gonna go a certain way. We're gonna see what happens. But basically, I took a bunch of classes, and I think I really proved myself. Here's the thing. I actually got on a team in a really roundabout, weird way. The first team I was on was a musical improv team, which is wild. And all of the skills that you think are important for musical improv, not important at all. All of the skills that you would never even consider to be integral to doing it they will spring at you, and you have no idea that you needed to know how to do that. But basically, it was coincidental. I was in classes with one of the founders of the theater, Christy, and there's 4 founders. Christy's one of them. And I was bugging her saying, what can I do to get on a team? What can I do? And she said, we have to wait until August to audition. And then in about March, I think this was March of 2017, they had a bunch of people leave for some reason. They just had some personal reasons and they ended up leaving the team, and they needed people. And so she goes, Vanessa, you've been bugging me for weeks. So that's where really bothering people helps, guys. In a nice way. You shouldn't be annoying, but I, talked her into letting me be with them, and that's how I was on that team. And then August came, and I ended up being on a short form team called Game Shark, which was so much fun. Basically, short form is anything that you'd see on Whose Line Is It Anyway? It's games. It's like theater games that you would play in an acting class. And then this past year, I decided to change because I realized that short form is awesome, but long form was a muscle that I really wanted to grow because it's a different mindset, it's a different skill set. So short form, like I said, are games. Probably maximum length of games is 8 minutes each. And most of the time they're 2 or 3 minutes apiece. And long form is a 20-30 minute set based on one word. So it's pretty much creating like a play or a movie in one foul swoop. And I realized that's not a skill that I have. I'm not good at dragging things out. Well, you might be surprised by that based on this answer, but thanks. I realized like I would rather stretch that muscle and get better at that. So I auditioned, and we actually formed a new team called Full Tilt. We're pretty awesome. But there's a new thing. I'm actually on another team. This is interesting, and this is the show you're going to see this Friday.
Okay, I'm excited.
So there's things called a duo, which is just 2 people doing a 20-30 minute set. And I'm really scared about that. And my friend Mindy, if anyone has ever seen The Good Place, it's a show.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
You know that show? You know the character Mindy St. Clair? She's in the middle place. So I actually did a master class with her. She's the nicest woman in the whole wide world. I'm obsessed with her. But so my friend Mindy, and my last name is St. Clair. So we decided there was just an open spot during a show and they needed 30 minutes to fill. And we went, hey, we both do improv. How hard can this be? So we decided to do our own duo called Mindy St. Clair, and we've done 1 show and no rehearsals ever. That's part of our shtick. Is we go, yeah, no rehearsal. I would not recommend that, by the way. It's only because she is super experienced and I'm somewhat good that we are able to manage figuring out these waters together. But we actually have a show this week, and we're opening up for some people from Second City. And if you know anything about improv, Second City is a huge deal. So I'm really excited. We probably should have done a rehearsal before meeting these people, but whatever. I mean, if we bomb, we bomb. I think it's a 10 o'clock show anyway, so I'm not worried.
I want to move on a little bit to stand-up because I feel you've been doing that a lot more recently, right?
Yes.
To me, stand-up comedy, like, I have so much respect for people who do improv, and I have so much respect for people who do stand-up because it is scary. It seems so scary to me to get up there, be completely vulnerable, and you do that with a lot of performance type of things. You're very vulnerable, but you're up there by yourself, making these jokes, hoping they'll land. And I've been to many open mic nights. I went to a bunch of open mic nights at a local coffee shop over the summer with my cousins, and there were a few stand-up quote-unquote comedians.
Oh no!
And they were just, it's so uncomfortable to watch. Like, every time they would get up, me and my cousins would all just go, oh no, and a collective sigh. Like, and I felt bad because I'm like, good for them.
You want them to be good.
Yes.
That's the thing. People don't go to comedy shows hoping that they suck. People go because they think, you know what? Maybe I'm seeing the next Chris Rock. Mm-hmm. And I will tell you, that's about a 1 in a million chance. As someone who sees open mics every night of the week, I think this is the first night I haven't been to an open mic since, like, in a couple, well, last week I didn't really do a lot because I was away, but like since being home, I'm
Mm-hmm.
there every single night, and it's gruesome what I see. It's honestly a crime scene up there. But it's fine because you're learning, and there was
Yes,
one
yes.
point where I'm sure people have felt that way about me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure that I was a train wreck
Yes.
for a while.
Yes, and I always try and remind myself, I've talked about this many times, of just like putting yourself out there, because that's something I struggle with, and just knowing that, you know, someone who's starting out, they're not going to be perfect, and like you said, it's not going to be the next like Chris Rock. It's a process, and so just be respectful and just cringe silently.
Oh, no. Unless they're truly offensive.
Okay, yes,
and then in
yes.
that case, you can really boo them. Because I would never say that, because what you may think is offensive is really just the tip of the iceberg. But I recently saw someone who was so bad. And there are really rough people. And this was at an open mic that is known for being a trash fire. This is known for being the worst thing. And this guy got cut after 15 seconds.
Oh, wow.
He just went up there. He was extremely intoxicated, and he just did some wild stuff. And the guy who ran the mic just said, nope, 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 you're off. And I'm really happy that he did that. But most of the time, people are gonna just be bad. They're just gonna be bad, and you're gonna have to sit through it for the next 6 minutes.
Real quick, I went to an open mic night at my college once, and it was this guy who'd never done stand-up, but he was literally just standing up there for like probably 15-20 minutes, and it was so long, and like we were trying to be nice, but
Was he really up there that long?
Maybe I'm exaggerating, it just time slowed down.
That can happen.
But like I was just standing there. I was like, I need you to please leave. Like, it was so bad. But moving on, I want you to just kind of talk about your experience in stand-up, you know, how you kind of got started with that. I just keep asking the same question. How did you get started in this? Because you've done so much. You've done it all. It's insane.
Okay, that's so nice and so not true, but I appreciate the accolade. Yeah, I'm really just getting started. I'm really happy about where things are going, but pretty much stand-up was an interesting experience because I had this realization that I couldn't rely on. With improv, you do have to rely on so many different people, unless you're doing duoprov. But when you're doing improv, you have 8 or 9 people minimum who you have to meet up with to rehearse, and that can be really tough when people aren't as motivated as you, or 2 people are, but 3 people is not enough to sustain the team. So I just realized when I'm not doing this, I have to be doing something creative. I have to be out there performing and meeting people. So why don't I try stand-up? So I started doing it. And I'll just tell you, because it's pretty boring. Honestly, it's just like writing jokes, figuring out how they work, getting up there. I had a couple nice people who were really cool to me, but I'll tell you the worst time I ever did stand up. And maybe you'll find it funny, maybe you won't, but here we are. So basically there was a coffee shop situation. And when you said that, it made me just groan internally. It was a slam poetry show, and I talked to the booker and I said, hey, I really want to do your show. I don't do poetry, I do stand-up comedy, but maybe it'll be a nice experience. maybe I'll be a comedy palate cleanser, right? And I was 100% wrong. I went there, and with poetry, it's so weird because they keep the mic in the stand. You're not supposed to do that when you do stand-up. I mean, people do it, but it just looks unprofessional. They're holding a notebook, they're reading it, they say everything super slow and with emotion, and people are just intently listening. They don't introduce you, they just turn down the lights so everyone looks at the stage, but they don't go like, and here's Vanessa St. They don't do any of that. They don't get the crowd pumped. Okay, there's no hype man. And so I get up there, and mind you, the woman before me, and let me say this, I actually really loved her poetry. It was really beautiful. She had a poem about one of the first, not one of the first, but one of the big names in the Black Lives Matter movement, one of the teenage boys who had been killed, she wrote a poem about him. And it was beautiful and heartfelt and emotional. And it was the last poem she did. And it was something along the lines of, now I'm paraphrasing, but you can roll with me here. It was like, bang, bang, blood on the ground, bang, bang, people dying. And I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. And the audience was in tears. Like, the audience was just sitting there, just like quietly sobbing. And then I get no intro, and I get up there, and I just throw the mic stand to the side, and my first line in my set is so horrible. Like, and everyone was immediately just on edge. Just on edge, and they were not laughing, and they were actually upset with me. I feel like it's because she had such a beautiful transcendent, emotional, climactic experience, and then I went up there and I was like, ha, ha, ha. I think that the energy was wildly different from what they were expecting.
No, I like, honestly, I kind of wish I would have been there, because like everyone probably would have been like super like emotional, and then you would have gotten up there and I would probably just like screamed or something.
You know what, here's the thing that I find so funny is I have a lot of jokes where I make fun of myself in a situation, but the setup doesn't seem like that. The setup seems like I'm going to make fun of marginalized communities, but that's not it. That's not it. I swear that's not what I'm doing. Like, for example, I have probably about 15 minutes worth of material of making fun of myself being so white compared to my boyfriend's Arab family. He's Syrian and Lebanese, and so I crack a lot of jokes about how like I feel like I want to fit in, but I just don't. But the setup to the joke sounds really racist. With the first 30 seconds, people always look at me like, oh no, you better not. And I know I can feel the tension building, which is part of the fun of doing stand-up. Is that's what stand-up, that's what a joke is. It's building tension and then pulling, that ladder underneath the people. Like you're making them climb a ladder and then all of a sudden kicking it out from under them. And so the laughter is them falling. And that's one of the moments where I definitely hope the joke lands, because if it doesn't, then they think I'm just a horrible person. So, you win some, you lose some. That's kind of that's kind of been my life's quote. My dad always used to say to me, sometimes you're the windshield, sometimes you're the bug. And I've really taken that, to its lengths at doing stand-up, because it's really fun. It's definitely a self-motivating job. You have to want to do it. You have to care about getting better, or else you never will. But it's really fun, and it's a good way to get yourself out there. And honestly, I think it's made me better at auditioning. Like when I go back to auditioning, I do it all the time. When I audition now versus, before, I think it's made me get better at reading a room. You know what I mean? Like reading a social situation and going, how far can I take this? And I can tell you that I took it way too far on that night at the coffee shop.
So, actually, that's a very good transition. So when you read an audience, and you're able to hopefully kind of tell, what you should and should not do, is there a way that you can like switch things up? And this would go for not just stand-up, but improv as well, to kind of like make the show appeal more to that certain audience.
At the end of the day, it's my job to be funny, and it's other people's, and when I'm doing improv, it's also my team's job to be funny. So if there's an audience that's a little bit more like tight-lipped, they're not gonna be laughing their patooties off, we can't at the end of a show go, well, the audience was terrible. I mean, we can't constantly be like making excuses when we bomb. But I will say that there are things that you can do to make the experience easier on everyone. Example, don't make fun of people that are, and when I use this phrasing, I'm putting air quotes up, like, who are below you in social status. And I'm not saying that because I believe it. I'm saying, like, how do I put this? Don't punch down. Like, make fun of people who everyone can gang up on. So if you have the choice between making fun of a homeless person or a super rich person, make fun of the super rich person. Don't go on stage and be like, yeah, homeless people suck. Like, the audience will just go, oh, no, don't say that. And if you have the choice between, like, kicking a puppy or kicking a lion, kick the lion, don't punch down. I think that that's the biggest thing in comedy is so many people like to pick on the little guy, the person who's had a lot of problems already. And so, never go on stage and do an accent of a race that you can't play. That was a big note that I've seen people get, and I have gotten myself. If you can't look like that person, you shouldn't play them. I am very white, and I have red curly hair, so I pretty much can do a great bomb Irish accent and German and French, but I'm pretty sure that's about it. And, I'm okay with that. You're not going to see me go up there and do like this wonky half Asian accent because it would hurt people's feelings. I try not to hurt people's feelings. I try to be more upbeat and do things that are emotionally funny, not so much like playing on anyone's, playing any sort of card. Does that make sense? I feel like audiences really, it's just different every night. The one thing I will say is when you're on stage, if the audience isn't digging it, sell it more. I know that they can feel when you're uncomfortable. The audience can tell when, especially, the worst is when you have written almost a pause in the joke because it's supposed to get a laugh, and you pause for that laughter and it doesn't get it, and then there's shock and terror on your face, and everyone in the audience gets uncomfortable, and they went, oh no, he wanted us to laugh or she wanted us to laugh, and then they get even more uncomfortable. Just breeze through it. Just pretend like nothing happened. And if it doesn't get a laugh, then try it again, and if it still doesn't get a laugh, maybe you should cut it. But it's one of those situations where you have to sell it even if no one's buying it, because eventually someone will buy it. Unless, again, it's terrible and offensive, and then you should cut it immediately. But otherwise, it's pretty much just based on just going ham. Just go hardcore. Don't let anyone be like, no, just sell it.
You've been performing, obviously, since you were a kid. How do you handle rejection? How have you learned to handle it better, and not get discouraged? And I guess just sort of talk about, was that something that was really hard for you to understand, especially when you started doing more professional shows and everything?
I would say that what I do to get over it is keep myself busy with the stand-up and the improv. When I don't have shows, in terms of, a theatrical production, which is a 2-month period or a 6-week period or something like that, those comedy shows and writing and keeping myself sharp in that sense keeps me going. I do know a lot of people who do strictly acting, and that would be really scary to me. I was recently at an audition, and I saw a good friend of mine, and he goes, oh, I haven't had a show since December 12th. And I went, whoa, buddy, you remember the date? Like, oh no. I mean, I didn't say that out loud, but he just reeked of desperation. And I went, oh, you're not going to get it. I can tell you right now that with that attitude, you're not going to get it. You just have to be really honest about who you are, and just kind of go for it hardcore and not worry about what happens. I think with auditioning, like I said, I got frustrated with being pigeonholed in a certain role, but there's nothing wrong. If you're working, you're working. Don't shun the jobs that you get. I try to keep myself busy, but it was an interesting experience whenever I started auditioning again, where most of my resume was comedy. And I auditioned for Meep in Anne Frank, The Diary of Anne Frank. And I remember the director looked at me when I walked in. He looked at my resume and he goes, why are you even auditioning for this? Oh. And I was like, and I had to recover somehow, because how can I didn't want to give him some long answer about how, I really want to do dramatic work again, and I really believe in myself. So I just looked at him, deadpan, and said, well, I really wanted to jump back into theater with the most depressing piece I could think of. And he did not find that funny.
Oh, no.
FYI, I did not get cast. And here's the thing: you're gonna swing at the ball. You're gonna swing at it. You're only gonna make a home run once every 50 times. And that's the thing, is you have to keep on swinging. I feel like at auditions, especially, whenever you see someone who goes, this is my first audition this year and it's March, I think, okay, well, you're making a lot ride on that one thing. Mm-hmm. But whenever you audition 4 or 5 times a week, it doesn't matter if you get it because you have one tomorrow or you have one the next day, and you're not putting all your lemons in that basket. You're kind of just... That's not the phrase. You're all the eggs, all the lemons. I've been drinking a lot of lemon water lately, really trying to get healthy. So lemons have been on the mind.
I mean, lemons work too.
Lemons work, yeah, they're round. But you're not putting everything, all this pressure on yourself for one instance. Mm-hmm. You're keeping yourself open. I think that helps you deal with it a lot better. They say that 10% of people do 90% of the work, and I can tell you that being productive in this business, or not being productive but being busy, you shouldn't sacrifice any mental health or anything like that, but people want to work with people who are in demand. They don't want to work with people who are reeking of desperation. So that's the only thing I have to say is, just go in there and be confident about who you are. And if they like it, then they like it. And if they don't, then you know what? Some people just haven't tried caviar. That's what I say whenever I really think I did well in an audition. I go, some people just don't know what they have until they've lost it. And, some people find that funny, and some people think it's wildly egotistic. So here we are. I'll give you the mic back.
We're getting towards the end here, but can you just go over, I guess, your favorite moments from shows that you've done, whether it be scripted theater, improv, stand-up, anything? You've done a lot of shows. You're a very busy woman. But is there any specific moments or shows that you remember that just really went amazing, really made you just feel so happy that you are in this business?
I do have one. I probably can't talk about it on here because it's just so crazy, and it's a super long explanation, but I have a couple. I have a couple that I really want to tell you about. One was from when I was a kid, and this was the moment that made me realize, I want to be funny, and I want to be in theater, and I want to do it forever. And I was in a production of Rapunzel, and I was Rapunzel, except this was a wonky, weird, not trademarked version of Rapunzel. Okay, it was like a rewrite. And basically this Rapunzel she had the long hair, but she was blind. She had glasses on. If she didn't have her glasses, then she couldn't see anything. And the prince also had glasses, that were extremely prescripted. So if he didn't have them on, he couldn't see. So there was a part in the show where the director said, I remember being I think 13 or 14 years old. And the director said, I want to show this moment where they both put on the glasses and they both look at each other and have this moment.
This is so weird.
And so, yeah, I know. And so I remember thinking, we have access to music, and this is a community theater, whatever. The song by Etta James,
At Last?
Yes, thank you. I completely forgot. I was in the middle of the story and was panicking. So At Last, I said, why don't you do that? As soon as we put on the glasses, you play that song. And I remember that this was a children's show. This is for children's theater for kids 8 and under. And I remember the kids thought it was funny because of the physical comedy, but the adults found it funny because of the reference. And that was my first moment directing something. You know what I mean? That was my first moment making a creative choice where someone wasn't telling me what to do. They asked, what do you think should happen? And that changed the whole trajectory of my life. I remember going, this is what this feels like. And it became like a drug, and I'm obsessed with it, and it's so much fun. another experience, and this is a super recent one. This happened last week when I was in New York. So, I was in New York, and I was visiting some friends. I have a bunch of friends who live there, and I had set up auditions because they were in classes, and then the audition got canceled. Maybe they found whoever they were looking for, whatever. I couldn't find it online anymore. It was the weirdest thing. So I just went on Backstage, and I typed in, things that are happening the next couple days. And I looked it up, and there was a shoot for an HBO show. And, I mean, it wasn't a big part or anything. It was just, like, a bunch of extras. But it was like a paid gig for 2 days. Coincidentally, the 2 days that I was there. And I mean, it was kind of like all of these stars aligned, because it just came up as soon as I went on Backstage. I didn't even have the proper identification to get cast in it. I just submitted to it anyway. I was, like, coincidentally the perfect type they were looking for. My permed hair was great because it was set in the 80s. And I coincidentally also had a dress on me. It was, like, it was the most wild thing. But I get there, and there were 400 people who were all background actors. And we're all in hair and makeup. There's like 15 or 20 makeup artists doing makeup, and then there's like 25 hairstylists all doing this big 80s hair, because this is a huge production. They're not going to let people do it themselves when they know nothing about the period. It was just so cool, and Maggie Gyllenhaal produces it, and I walked right behind her a bunch of times. I did bump into her, and I was ready to jump off a bridge as soon as I did, but it was just the most magical experience. So cool. And I got paid like a good bit of money for it, but that's not the point. The money's not the point. What I'm saying is it like reinvigorated this sense in me that even if I can't land a huge part immediately, I can still work these different jobs and still do what I want to do and not have to worry about getting some other kind of, I've taught acting classes, I've taught improv classes, and I do enjoy it, but it's so nice to know that I could do this and do this full time. And I think that just reinvigorated my love of acting, and it was such an interesting experience.
I saw too, you said like that you were at least like featured a little bit more up front, because didn't the director say like, oh, don't let her do that, be up front?
That was so cool. Later on they wanted to put me in another scene, like one of the DPs, and then the director said no, she was 2 scene, in the first one we did. And I went, oh look who's coming to mama. Well, I didn't say that at all, but I definitely thought, oh my gosh, there's a chance that I could be seen. So out of 400 people, I am pretty excited that I was on camera a little bit. But everyone has an origin story. Not everyone's gonna make it, but I'd like to think I'll get there. But no matter what, just these experiences, finding the coolness and joy in everyday experiences leads you to this place. And like I said with the yes and, if I had not just, there was nothing about this shoot that was enticing to me. And my mom was like, no, Vanessa, don't do this. What are you doing? Because nobody in my family works in the arts. So they were all like, that's sketchy. I just looked up the show. And I was like, no, it's HBO, Mom. It's not going to be bad. You know what I mean? So I had to kind of just say, okay, I don't have the proper identification. I don't have the proper clothing. I'm not ready for this at all. But there's a hunch in me that just says, yes, and why not? Why not do this? So stick with that mentality. I think it'll help.
So next question, who are your inspirations? Obviously Elvis is one of them.
The king.
But who else?
Time. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Okay, you're good.
I love clearly Elvis Presley. I'm really inspired, and I know a lot of people say this because Studio 54, that documentary came out, so everyone's like, oh, Studio 54, but I want to let you know I've been a fan since I was 11. But I love Cher, and Carol Burnett and Lucille Ball, and those are, I would say, my biggest. I love Bette Midler, and Gilda Radner. I don't know if you know who Gilda.
I don't know who that is.
Okay, she was the first member of SNL to be cast ever.
Oh, okay.
She was a part of the original cast, but out of all of the cast members, she was actually the first one hired. Okay. She did the Rosanna character, if you've ever seen that. Did you watch the SNL 50th anniversary or 40th anniversary?
SNL.
That's okay. She's pretty famous in terms of the comedy world, but I actually recently found this out. She had her own show on Broadway. She had a one-woman show on Broadway, and I think that's really amazing. And she kind of transcended genre. There's something that so many people, I think, I don't know if this is recent, but it seems like Amy Poehler and Tina Fey, and they're amazing. I'm obsessed with them as well. But it seems like people can't trust them to do regular acting gigs, or like Kristen Wiig. Every time that they do a regular acting gig, people are just so, they're like, oh, how dare they do a dramatic part? You know what I mean? It's really interesting to me how they think, oh, you're funny, you can't be good at other emotions. But there are so many people who are really great at it. I mean, Robin Williams is one of the greatest actors of all time, and he did stand-up comedy, he did improv, he was wildly funny before he ever did anything that was nominated for an Oscar. And so I kind of want to be like that, but, I'll be happy to get anything I can get right now. But those are some of my biggest inspirations. I would say Cher, because I love music. I'm obsessed with music, and I do sing for musical theater, but I wouldn't call myself a musician by any stretch of the word. But I've always loved her because she was able to be this actress, and she was able to be pretty, and she wasn't pigeonholed into this like funny woman category, and yet she was so funny. It's just the way that she branded herself, I guess. I'm already down the path of being like the kind of ugly best friend, but I'm okay. But I'm okay with that because it's more interesting roles. I think, oh, those people are really solid. Is there anyone else that I adore? Actually, there's so many people, but we don't have enough time for me to talk about how many people I'm obsessed with. Yeah, just pretty much anyone who's like wildly artistic and doesn't stick to a specific medium, or if they do, they're really going hard at it. Whatever they do, they decide to just really, really dive into. You know who also inspires me? Completely off topic. I love the Industrial Revolution. I'm a huge history nerd, and so maybe you've heard me talk about this. Maybe.
I think so, maybe.
Okay, so I love the Industrial Revolution, and I'm wildly inspired by people like Henry Clay Frick, Andrew Carnegie, Cornelius Vanderbilt, John D. Rockefeller, and I know that they're not the greatest people, so we can back it on up right there. I know that they're not the most wonderful people, but in terms of just sheer motivation and just being like the epitome of the American dream, and I know that they had to walk on the backs of others to get there, but that being said, it was a different time. Okay.
I mean, they did so much for the country,
still
though.
did so much for the world. They did so much, and I really applaud their ability to see past all obstacles and to say, I know that all the cards are stacked against me. I don't care. And I just really appreciate that attitude. If you want to check out something really cool, there's a documentary called The Men Who Built America, and we can talk about how upset I am over the title, but because there are many women who helped build the country too. But I actually really love that documentary. It's very interesting, and a good introduction into that time period. You know who I also love? Surprising choice. Marilyn Monroe. I'm a big fan of hers, for the reason that so many people think she was so stupid. And she wasn't. She was not. She knew exactly what she was doing, and she really made a lot of stands in her own way. I mean, if it wasn't for her, then Elizabeth Taylor would have never been paid the $1 million that she was paid to do Cleopatra. Oh, I love Elizabeth Taylor. But Marilyn Monroe actually was the first person back then, the way that today everyone's a free agent. So you basically get booked for things, just one at a time. Back then, you'd be hired by a studio for 4 years. And they would say, oh, you'll be hired for 4 years. You're going to do, we guarantee you to do 10 films. They didn't say how big of a part you'd get. It was basically all based on who you knew and if someone liked you enough to give you a lead role. And she was the first person to say, this was after she was famous. She goes, no, I have I have more pull than the studio does. I know that people go to see the movies for me. And so she demanded that she be hired outright to do a film versus, be in a contract for many years. She reinvented the game. And there was if you know anything about jazz, Ella Fitzgerald is a wonderful, wonderful singer. She did a lot of stuff with Louis Armstrong. She was not allowed to do a show at this club in Hollywood. I can't remember the name of the club, but it was in the 50s, and it was like an all-white club, which is horrible. They wouldn't even allow like black singers in. And so Marilyn called the owner and said, "I want Ella Fitzgerald to sing." Basically Ella was turned away from performing at the club. Marilyn heard about it. So she called the club owner and said, "I will come and sit in the front row every night that she's performing if you book her." And he goes, "Okay, well, I can do that publicity." So she single-handedly made steps to help in different ways, like helping the industry, helping women, also helping in the civil rights movement without even trying. She was just doing it because she felt it was the right thing to do. So I'm a big fan of hers as well.
So I actually had a huge Marilyn Monroe phase in 8th grade, and I had this big mural of her that was probably the size of that picture. Obviously, no one can see that.
No, that's pretty big though.
A little bit smaller, but still really big. Had it right above my bed. Kind of tacky looking back now, but at the time, I absolutely loved it, and I was obsessed with her. And did you ever see that show Smash?
Yes.
Oh, I love that show. But I agree. She is her story is just so interesting, and we are completely getting off topic. But her, just the fact that, like you said, so many people think she's dumb. People back then thought she was dumb, and that's really
she created a character, and she literally is. I mean, I don't know, but I would say she's probably one of the best actresses of the 20th century to be in a character 24/7 and to make generations of people believe something about you that is not true. You've got to be intelligent. She took what she thought every man wanted and then created it and manufactured this image. She was the Kardashians before they were I mean, if it weren't for her, they wouldn't exist. I feel like she was the first person. I mean, if social media were around when she was our age, I can't imagine what she would do. She created opportunities that we would not even consider today.
Yeah, I 100% agree, and that makes me so happy that you listed her as one of your inspirations. Okay, so unfortunately, it is almost time for this interview to end. But before we go, one last question: what is next for Vanessa St. Clair?
So many things. Oh my gosh. I don't know. I'm actually doing this. You'll get a kick out of this. I'm doing this immersive theater show called The Stray. It's about these 3 cats I'm playing. It's a 3-person play, and I don't know if you know what immersive theater is, but basically there is no audience. You go in and you are a part of it. They'll only have 10. It's not like here's the stage and here's the audience sitting down. They kind of walk from place to place, and they can experience a storyline, and they can ultimately change the outcome of the story as well. And so I'm playing the Calico Cat. I'm very excited. It's with a really awesome professional theater company in town, so I'm super pumped. This is going to be really artsy and weird, and I'm so excited to do it. And I'm auditioning for a lot of stuff coming up, so we'll see if I get booked for anything after that. But that's really exciting. And then just doing that improv show, trying to book more stand-up stuff. I have updates for all the shows, and this is a plug, not so subtle. I do have a Facebook page under Vanessa St. Clair, and that's ST.CLAIR. And that is my real name, by the way. A lot of people ask if that's a stage name. It is not. But yeah, and Instagram is the same thing. I post pretty much updates for all my shows on there. Yeah, I think just overall, I'm trying to be more professional and get out there and, see what the world has to offer, because, I mean, I don't want to ultimately be in Pittsburgh forever. I do want to move on, but it's a great training ground, and I'm excited to work with really cool people who we all make each other better. So I'm really excited that, I'm on the improv team that I'm on. Hopefully, if anyone's in the Pittsburgh area, I know this is broadcast mostly to Tennessee, but
I mean, I just post on whoever can view it. So
Well, great. I'm gonna be plugging the heck out of this. But yeah, it's really cool, and if you have a chance, just message me and we can see about getting on a show, or having you come see a show, because I think seeing live comedy or like smaller venues is such a new experience because it's more intimate. There's so much you can experience. You can see facial expressions better. It's just a fun time, and I think anyone should definitely check out smaller venues and support like local artists, whether that be, like painting or sculpting or music or whatever, just to support like local up and coming people. I think that's really important to making those people one day be big. Like, I may not be big, but hopefully I am, and one day, well, I'll be like, hey, I was on a podcast. When?
Well, first of all, I am looking forward to all those future projects. Unfortunately, I don't live in Pittsburgh, but I love to like at least see like that you're killing it out there on your Instagram stories.
And same, I love to see how your show's going and everything that you're experiencing in school, and I know that this is just the beginning. I feel like we caught each other and we became friends at such a earmarked time. We were experiencing so much change. I mean, you were literally moving the next week that I met you. When I met you, you went like, "Oh, I'm moving in a couple weeks."
Yeah, it was probably in a few weeks, like, or a month maybe. I don't really remember exactly, but it was definitely like soon after. I was so upset because I was like, this girl is just so funny, and I have to leave, and I want to just see every show.
Oh, you're so sweet. No, I feel like we have experienced. It's so weird. Our friendship is mostly based on social media, and I love that because we have a better friendship than a lot of my friends who I live near. But, just like keeping up with each other, and I love to see what you're up to, and it's great to support people before they make it, when they're having those struggles, because then you get to see what it's actually like.
Yes.
I like to think that my Instagram is almost a how-to on not to get cast. No, like just for younger actors looking at, this is what it's gonna be like. I'm gonna get a nosebleed on an on-camera audition today. That actually happened to one of my good friends. So yeah, it's just a fun experience, but I'm happy to be with you.
Yes, well, that honestly means so much to me, and I just seriously want to thank you so much for coming all the way out here to meet me, and you're just so amazing. I'm literally just like one of your biggest fans, like for real.
I'm crying.
And I can't. You kept saying like, well, hopefully like one day I'll be successful and or like famous, and I'm like, I can't. Like, I seriously cannot wait to see you become famous, because I'm like, I can't see it going any other way. You just have such a serious talent, and you're just seriously constantly killing it. Anything else that you'd like to end with real quick?
Yeah, support local artists and definitely check out my Instagram because it's popping.
It is. It really is.
And just say yes and to more experiences, because I think you'll have a lot more fun in life, and that's honestly what it's all about. Just having fun has really made my life a lot better.
Yes, I 100% agree, and I'm going to try and take home that advice with me. Just one last time, thank you so much, Vanessa, for being here, and thank you guys so much for listening. I will see you guys next time.